Mike Doyle, owner of Drive80 Animation Studio. Welcome to AV123. It's great to have you with us. Now, before we get into the more serious stuff, let me ask you this because I'm absolutely intrigued. Drive80, what does that refer to? Miles per hour? Speed,
Yeah. You
speed
know
of
what's
light?
funny? I actually accidentally wore this shirt today. I didn't, I had two interviews. Oh, I had a sales interview and I was like, oh, I'm literally branding myself. And then when we got on here and you said we're going to videotape this, I was like, wow, I luckily have a branded shirt. Oh, I have a shirt on that represents the
It's all
company.
about branding, isn't it, Mike?
It's all about the outward facing look. I was in a punk band in my late teens, early 20s. And my rule of thumb was if I could say the band name, if we can come up with any band name we came up with, if I could say it to my mom without cringing, then I thought it was a good name. That was a punk band. We called ourselves Lane Meyer, kind of rolled off the tongue. And then when I would start, I had started and ended a bunch of businesses along the way, and that was always my rule of thumb. And when I started this, I started my own LLC, and I was living in New Jersey at the time, and Route 80 goes across the entire United States. So I went to go see a movie. It was like a Monday, and I said, well, let me go watch a movie. Let me get out of my place and just kind of clear my head, think of a name. I'm driving, listening to some like metal, and just like, all right, just let my mind go. And I'm on Route 80. I'm like, oh, Route 80, this would be kind of cool. Like, I'm on Route 80, driving 80. Oh, drive 80. That's pretty dope. And what if I was like, well, how would that be? I like the name, but how's that represent animation? Well, I was doing everything at the time, and I wanted to be general just because I didn't want to be very specific. Drive 80 graphic design studio, and now I do animation. I
What
thought
inspired you to get involved in animation? Why animation?
when I was a kid, I loved Looney Tunes and Ren and Stimpy and all that stuff. And I used to draw on these things. I used to do flip books, like the sticky pads.
Yes.
I just had a knack for knowing frame to frame.
So you were a doodler.
I was a doodler. I just
Yeah.
naturally can draw. I used to be able to look at comics and redraw it verbatim, like very detailed. Can't do it out of my brain. Took a class when I was in San Diego, 2002, and we were learning Flash, which is an early animation program, and I just got it right away. So I added that into my repertoire of things to doing freelance. And I came across explainer videos just because they would pop up here and there on Vimeo, and I just loved them. That was one, it was about the divide of wealth in America, and this guy did it so amazing. I was just blown away. I'm like, how did he do this? And started working in After Effects and just read a book about doing one thing really well and make a company out of that. So I just decided to get rid of everything and stick with animation.
Animation is a very popular medium, and competition must be fairly ridiculous.
Not
And
really.
that's not even factoring AI into the equation. So, what makes you, as the owner of Drive80 and the company, different? What do you offer that makes you special? Why should somebody come to you?
I never know how to answer that question. I everyone has everyone has their keywords. I would say I'm really fast as far as the workflow goes, I'm very structured because I just do explainer videos. It's very beginning to end. It's the same thing over and over. It's very structured. The pricing's the same, different tiers. I've been doing it for so long that I know the process. I'm very quick to respond in email, even like when someone reaches out to get like a quote or something. I had a sales call today, and she started with, "Thanks for getting back so fast." And I think a lot of freelancers out there they're very creative. Like, I mean, I'm not the best creative person out there. I'm not the best animator by any means, but the stuff that I do, when clients see it, they're like, "Oh my God, I could fade text in and out and it'd blow their minds." So I think the business side of it, because I've been in mastermind groups, I've had business coaches, I've done sales training, I know the back end, I studied business books and processes and things like that. I think a lot of creatives skip that part and they just think they're going to make some cool stuff. And when it comes down to business, they're very emotionally attached to it and they're very hard to communicate with. And I'm the complete opposite of that because I'm just, I don't know. I just understand that process. And I also know when I have freelancers work for me, I expect the same thing, which is why I don't really work with a lot of freelancers because there are a lot of animators and they do really good work, but I think I'm not saying all of them, but I've seen a lot of them where they're lacking in that stuff.
What drew you to explain a video specifically? Because surely there are so many genres that fit under the umbrella of animation that you could do so much more.
Based on that, so I read a book, what was it called? Built to Sell. Is this business coach. He grew and sold multiple businesses from what he says.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to make up this whole scenario based on a collaboration of different people I worked with. And so he works with this guy and the guy does all this stuff. And he said, what do you love doing? What do you make the most money off of? What's the least headache for you? He said, logos. He's like, great, just do logos. So the book talks about that. And to me, it just spoke to me because I was doing websites, photography, videography, graphic design, animation, blah, blah, blah at that time. The process is always different. Every quote's different. You were doing 5 different things and it was very complicated. With websites, you press a button, you can break everything. And then the iPhone comes out and the iPads and you got to like work it to do this stuff. With the video, I just decided that you can't break it. It's play and pause. That's it. Or you skip to the next video. Explainer video, I can control the setting. I don't have to show up with tens of thousands of dollars of new video equipment every year like people do out there, which blows my mind. Like you could still probably use stuff from 10 years ago and still make it look good. So I can control the whole thing. I can have a lot of fun with it and I can advance on what I'm doing. But I mean, I've been doing it for 13 years and it's just worked for me.
What makes an animation video successful, given your experience now and looking back? What makes an animation video successful in terms of engaging your audience and conveying the message?
It just depends on the company. It has to match the voice of the brand. And like I've worked with clients that are, say, Lenovo, where you can be fun and fast paced and it matches it. And then I've done medical videos where you have to really have a little bit of a bedside manner to get their attention. I think that there's a lot of videos out there where it's just too much going on and they add things for no reason. If it doesn't go with what's being said, or if you by the end of it, if someone just is like, I have no idea what I just saw, or I have no idea what I just learned. I didn't learn anything, but that looked cool. To me, that's a failure.
Okay.
So it has to be memorable and it has to have a flow. Everything has to match the speed, the design, the music, the voiceover, all that stuff has to be one whole thing.
So it has to, as far as you're concerned, there must be a very specific focus on topic, and you don't sort of,
Yeah.
you don't move away from that.
I mean, everything has to have one goal.
Yeah.
So if you have that with your client, I always ask them who you're talking to. What's the
Yeah.
audience? What's their pain point? What's your one thing you need to get out of this? And you work backwards from there. If anything doesn't go in that direction, it's like you get rid of it. And that's basically, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of companies do. I mean, I'm kind of speaking broadly. There's just animation companies that just they blow my mind, and they do, like I said, they do killer work. If you're not going in one direction, one specific direction, you're like, oh, we'll do like 5. I usually say to a client, I'm like, well, you're talking to everybody, which means you're talking to nobody. You got to talk to one specific thing. So I try to get that out of them, and a lot of times they're like, oh, okay, and if we're designing it, and they say, well, we want to do this. I'm like, well, is that speaking directly to this person? They said no. I'm like, well, do you want to keep it in, or is that gonna be a waste? No.
From my point of view as a voice actor, what I've found particularly complicated and often frustrating is a client's inability to brief you correctly. Do you find that?
I'm the kind of person that if someone sends me a 10-page list or a brand guide or something, I just goes over my head. And I try to keep it as simple as possible. So when I reach out to a voice actor on Voice 123, I give them a very specific, I've done it since 2013. I've been using the site, and I've never had someone come back to me and say, I don't get this. I'll say, this is the company, this is what they sell, this is the tone. And typically I think that a lot of videos now are casual conversation, be happy but not overly expressively happy and annoying. I just go with that and say, just do your thing, because I'm not a VO. And they kill it every time for me.
Let's imagine. Let's imagine I'm a client, right? And I come knocking on your door. Hello, I need an explainer animation video. Can you walk us through your typical workflow from formulation of concept to final delivery of the actual animation?
So then I'd ask, so you're basically asking what my process is.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say it's what is it? It's 5 steps. We don't do a script. We used to do scripts. And I stopped doing that because I had a freelance copywriter years ago. She was great, but she got a full-time job. So when I told clients this, they're like, well, we're the marketing department. We can write it. I'm like, great. Here's a structure. I'll send you some scripts, but here's like a loose way to write it. Start with 3 pain points in the middle. This is how we save the day. Don't, tell them how the sausage is made completely. End with a call to action. But then I'm like, I can send you more scripts and say, these are good videos to kind of pull from to write this. So they send it back to me. I look through it, make sure that it has enough words. And I say, if you want to do 60 seconds, you want to have it be about 150 words, 90 seconds, 225. Basically, every 75 words is 30 seconds on average. If you're speaking in a casual way, it's about 2.5 words a second is what I've formulated over the last decade or so. Give them that kind of a structure. They give it to me. I say, all right, there's 4 stages. It'll be initial design, where I come up with a couple concepts based on the branding you send me, your website, anything you have. We'll build off that, go in this direction. And it's like 3 to 5 screens, which I do in Illustrator. It won't be sketched out. I'll be like literally drawn out in Adobe Illustrator. Go back and forth with them, see if we nailed it. And they're like, okay, that's the direction I want to go in. Do a full storyboard, get on a call with them at the end of 5-7 business days, walk them through it, see, it's like, here's this first screen. This is all designed in Illustrator. This is basically, if the video was pausing every 5 seconds, this is what we're showing you. Go through that, and if they tweak anything, have it like write that down, talk them through how things will move, if what we need to revise, if it's not telling the story right, revise it, send it back in a couple days, lock that down, send them some voiceover samples, have them choose which one. I reach out to the voiceover, get them to record it, give me that. I take all the assets, put it into After Effects and animate it, send them the video, and then they check it out. So I tell them it's not a lot of time on their end, which they also like as well.
How do you approach the process of actually translating a client's vision into an effective animation? Let me tell you why I ask that. Because
Yeah.
so often it'll happen that a client may come to you and they want to explain a video, but what they want isn't going to work, because you know that, having been in animation for so long. How are you able to say, listen, I think this might work better?
I just say that. I'll be like,
Okay.
here's my opinion. I've been doing this for so long. I think the thing, kind of go back to your point, your question earlier about what's it like working with me, or maybe why someone should choose to work with me. I forget how you like worded it before. I'm just I think I keep it so simple that I think a lot of clients want this. They're used to a website, sales aids, all this other stuff that's just so much going on. It's complicated. I keep it so simple that at the end they are like, that was the easiest thing. And I don't know if you worked in pharmaceutical before. I'm sure you have, since you said you were a creative director. You've had to deal with legal teams, have you?
Hmm.
It's a giant nightmare. But with this, I've worked with Novartis and these pharmaceutical companies, Ferring. They'll get sign off on the legal so fast because I'm like, just send them the script. That's all they need to worry about. And if we send them the storyboard, if someone's getting their head chopped off, obviously we're going in the wrong direction. They're going to say no. And it's just simple. So my whole process is simple. So my communication is, you're working with me, I'm working with you, you're a human being, I'm a human being. I'm going to talk to you direct. I'm going to have a bit of a softer tone, but as I get to know clients, I'll kind of be like, if you want my opinion, you're paying for me. I don't think this is the best direction, but if you want to go with it, we can see where it goes. I think it'll go better this way. And I've never had a client at the end where I'm like, told you so.
It doesn't happen, or it does happen.
Nah, I've lucked out. I say it all the time, and for doing this for 13 years, every project is simple. I mean, I'm always nervous every time a project starts. Every time I send the design, when I send the animation, I'm always like pretty confident because nobody really, there's a very small amount of people who know motion. And I said earlier, if you make something fade in and out, people are like, oh my God. But if you add just a little bit more and give life to it, it really, that part is less scary. It's when I present the initial design and the storyboard, I'm always like, man, they're gonna hate this, they're gonna think it sucks. Like every single project, I always have this, and
Yes.
I think every creative has that where you just
Yeah,
have imposter
absolutely.
syndrome.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I've literally lucked out for 13 years with
You
having
you
very good clients.
mentioned you mentioned tone, and that the esoterics involved in the creative process are sometimes terribly complicated, which you seem to avoid because you focus on simplicity. But how do you ensure that the style and the tone of your animations align with your client's branding and your client's goals? Do you need to lead them in that direction, or do you take their criticism?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the storyboard stage is the most critical part because that's taking the branding that they've sent me. Here's some collateral. Here's the website. Here's some print pieces and stuff. And a lot of times I mean, I've had a client just give us a logo and say, we don't know, just go nuts. I'm like, okay, well, do you want characters? Do you want infographics? Oh, we want this. We want a mix. Okay, we'll go with it.
Mm,
And yeah, like I said, if they just have a logo, we actually created an entire brand for a company that they were a subdivision of this larger company, and they had this print on demand digital service that they were trying to get off the ground. And they're like, we want to do it kind of like Apple versus Mac and stuff. So we came up with these two characters, like an old character that was black and white, and the young character was in color. And the two of them just kind of have it's really funny. And they loved it, and they did 9 other videos. And then I said, look, like we'll give you the Illustrator files. And they took from that and they put it on the website and the print. So they created a whole brand based off of what we came up with. In other things like Lenovo is very specific. They have, I mean, actually never think about it. Lenovo is very hardcore about their branding, but I've done videos with a marketing company called Brasco in Raleigh, and they're like, we want characters, and we kept it black. I mean, that's Lenovo's thing, is like a lot of black and a lot of red. But we broke out of it into these secondary colors and stuff, and it doesn't match hardly anything Lenovo, but they just went with it and they loved it. So I don't know, maybe I'm just like super lucky, or as long as it has their branding in it, and then the tone of it, like you said, if it's a serious product, it can't be like pops and flashes and all this stuff in the video. It's gotta if you're talking to a patient, you can't be like, woohoo, yeah, pew, you got to really have a soft tone, but you can't have it be super somber and depressing. Like, how
yeah.
do you find that middle ground? And when you do that, I think you just have a good way of having that, having the finished product match that.
With reference to your talking about characterizations and characters, how important, I've got to ask you this question, how important is voiceover in animation?
Oh, I think it's just as important as the script, as the design. It's as the music, it's the tone, everything. If you're talking like your voice would be very, I think I could see you in different applications, but it's calming, but I feel like you could also do like funny stuff. And it's just, if you have something that's pretty serious, or something's like, hey, what's going on?
Mm,
That would ruin the video. It
yes.
has to, all those elements have to match.
Do you make that determination, or does the client make it? Or do you sort of agree to disagree on occasion?
I say, sit back. I take care of it all. All you guys need to do is give a little bit of time for signing off the initial design. The most time you're going to spend besides creating the script is going to be the call with me. It's 30 minutes to an hour of going through the storyboard. Then it's emailing back and forth. Same goes to voiceovers. That's why I use Voice 123. And I would use this website since 2013. The reason why I do it is because I can go on there, and this sounds like a commercial, and this wasn't set up like this, anyone listening. This is like literally just me saying why I do this. I go on there, I say, give me 15 proposals. Here's a piece of the script. Here's the tone. Here's the budget. It's fixed. I don't go above it. If you wanted to audition, great. If not, then like there's a billion other projects out there. And 48, 36 hours usually what I give it to cut off. So I'll have all these additions. I go through and probably listen to 2, 3 seconds of it. And I'll be like, no, yeah, no, no. And I'll delete, delete, delete. I'm like, all right, let me keep this one around. Probably takes me a solid 3 to 5 minutes to choose the top 2 or 3. And I'll only send them, I usually would try to send 2. And I'll ask in the beginning, like, who's the audience we're speaking to? Do we want a female voice? Do we want a male voice? How old, how young do they want to be? So they'll give me that. And sometimes they're like, oh, we're not sure. So I usually give a mix of male and female because I don't know what's going to work. I typically, for the videos I do, will be young adult to adult on male or female side. It's rare that I do children. It's rare that I do like an older adult. And I'll just listen to it on my end and say, this will work. And I'm like, this won't work. And then I send it to the client and they just send them a link and they're like, oh, we want to use, Steven. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'll reach out to them and just be like, hey, you want this project? I'm like, yep.
Tell me, Mike, has there been a really challenging project you've worked on? What sort of
In which apps?
obstacles? Yeah, what sort of obstacles did you have to overcome?
No,
Can you think of one?
honestly. Those would only be if I'm working directly with a marketing company and they want to go outside of the basic structure that I have, the process that I have. But that's more if they supply design and I'm just making things move. That's where it can be a little tricky, but the client will have a lot of revisions because they didn't set them up right to where we're at. So it's almost like we get to this point and then we're working back here. And I'm just like, all right, well, they want to pay for it. That's fine. We'll just do, revisions and things like that. But I had one client over 13 years, and I had met him through CrossFit stuff, and he had a company. They were doing food delivery, like pre-made meals. And I haven't worked with him in forever, but he signed off for the initial design. I do the full storyboard, and he's like, "Why is everything red?" I'm like, That's your branding." He's like, "Oh, we want it to be blue." It's like we built the house and bought all the tapestry and the paint, and he's like, and then we painted it. He's like, "Why did you do that?" You're like, "Well, you signed off on all this." That even the marketing director was like, "I don't even know how you haven't fired us yet." I was like, "I'm close, but I'm gonna just stick with this." And the video came out well, but that was it. And obviously too, when it's a really small client, I mean, a lot of bigger clients are great to work with because they have a giant budget. So when you give them a number, you're probably underselling yourself and just like you probably cut yourself short of what you should charge. Especially if someone's like, yeah, right away. They're like, that sounds great. You're like, I should have probably charged a little bit more. But they have other things to worry about. If it's a small company, let's say they're paying a couple grand, that might be all their money, and they're going to treat it as they're spending $100,000. So they sometimes can be challenging, but I've had one over this period of time that's been that way. Everything else, they respect the craft, they trust me, and I've never led them in the wrong direction. I'll even check with them like everything's good, this is going the right way, and they're like, yeah, we love it. And it's like, okay, like, do you know how to use this thing when you're done? Here's a checklist. Here's like 20 something ideas of how you can market with it. Here's all these assets. I really tried to outside of just making a video to try to be there. And then even if they're looking for other things, I'm like, I don't do that, but I'll refer them to people that can help them. So yeah, I try to keep a really good relationship with like everyone I've worked with.
It would be fair to say that the media landscape is volatile. It's changing rapidly now. In the business you're in, and that you've been in for 13 years, to stay competitive, I can only assume you need to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening. So are there trends developing that you've noticed? I mean, are there, short and simple, where is animation going, do you think?
I kind of don't pay attention to it, to be honest.
Mm.
Um,
You don't
well, I
think you
mean,
should?
I think there's two ways to go about it. A, you look at it too much where it freaks you out and you can't move. or you're so blind to it that you walk outside and it's like, what was that? Twilight Zone where the guy's reading the books and the whole world is nuclear, then he comes outside and it's all gone and he's like, oh, I'll just read, and like, where did everything go? So you can't have that aspect of it. I pay attention. I'm on Instagram a lot, sadly, and I get stuck in the reels. I'll become that when I'm bored. I'm just like, oh, I fill my time, and it's crazy. What I find is that everyone's repeating what everyone else is doing, and there's no creativity out there, and it drives me crazy. I mean, I don't know if you've seen these graphic design tips with Illustrator. I'm sure you're not getting peppered with these because it might not be a program you're using. There's these videos where they show the wrong way and it'll cut back to the guy's face and he's like, I'm doing it wrong. And he like looks at the camera and he waves no. And then he points and then he shows the right way. And then they go like this at the end. I can't stand that because then everyone's repeating it. So that's the problem out there, is that no one's coming up with anything original. So I think that's why I try not to. I'm almost stuck creatively now because I try to do something so different with the stuff that I make. Like even now, before we got on the call, I'm taking old projects and going into After Effects and I'm digging down the layers where I'm selecting everything so it shows all the elements that are moving, and then I zoom out and I do the next one where it's the next level up and that, and then it goes all the way up. Then it shows a clip of that what I just did. So it's kind of the behind the scenes of the machine, and it's interesting. And I haven't seen anyone really do that. I'm sure it's done, but I don't see it a lot. So then I'll do that and I'll post it on LinkedIn. So yeah, I don't want to repeat what anyone else is doing, but I think also a lot of videos out there just have all the text on the screen. This is crazy. So that's what I see is annoying. And I think AI sucks. It's just too
You'd
much.
never use AI voices.
I don't like to. I had a client do it one time, and these guys, they were trying an idea out. So I was like, okay, cool. And the guy's like, oh, I can just upload this. And the voice was interesting. I mean, you could hear the voice breathing in between takes, which was crazy to me. I I don't know. I think AI is cool for little tiny things where for me in Photoshop, if I want to get rid of something, I could just say like take this out and it does. I'm like, great. Illustrator, if I do design a cat on a tree or climb on a tree or something, it does it and it doesn't work. I'm sure it's gonna get better. Voices, I don't know. Maybe I'm just old school and want to talk to a person and have them fix it for me and give them work. I don't like the AI.
Here's a question that I want to ask you, and I want you to answer without really thinking. What makes animation the right tool for marketing and communication?
It's going to grab done right, it's going to grab your attention, I think, more than anything out there. And granted, I got an ad the other day from this company Boards, and they took a screenshot of the text app in on an iPhone,
Mm.
and it just had a question and had a couple things crossed out and then something else, but it was so simple, and I was like, that's really good. But I think animation has, I don't know, I think it just keeps your attention more. Where but it depends. I don't know. It depends on what it's going against. Like I said, you can have text on the screen. If it's done well, that'll blow a video out of the water. If you have a real problem, you're looking for an answer right away. So I think animation, if you don't, it gets to it fast and it paints a picture. Like I like to tell them, paint the picture for them. Do you have blah 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 as a pain point? Yeah. Oh, great. Now I'm going to pay attention. And it's just an entry point. It's not going to give you the solution. It's just then click here or call us. So it kind of creates this world that they want to live in. Like I want that. And if it's someone talking on camera, it might not represent them too well. So you can kind of be a little bit more generic with an animation. Or it could not have a person. It could be infographics that jump around. It's just there's so many different ways to get to make it creatively educate someone and hold them there. So that's why I love it. Plus I just love animating. So it's more of a personal thing.
Mike, as a final question, let's imagine for a moment that I'm a young, takes a lot of imagination, but let's imagine that I'm a young, enthusiastic animator who wants to start my own animation studio. What advice would you give me?
Actually, I had someone ask me this the other day. I said, learn sales, learn networking, Those are the top two. The animation part, obviously, always depending on if you want to do a company, then you got to learn the business part of it, and then the creativity part is it's hard to balance the two. I'm lucky that I can grab grasp both. So I'd say learn a lot of the business side and balance that with keeping up with where you want to go with animation. I wouldn't say the trends because like I said, there's videos out there that will kill what I do because it's got a team of people and it's like stuff that's like and it's really well. And I'm 45, man. I'm not gonna sit here and spend another 10 years learning how to do this or five or whatever it's gonna be. I in that part, I mean, if I really wanted to grow this company to be bigger, I'd be working on just finding freelancers, designers, animators, and just having them come in, get a project manager, do all that stuff. I used to want to do that. I'm like, I don't really want to do that anymore. So I'd say just have a vision, test it out, but know the foundation of a business if you want to be a business. If you want to just be a freelancer, then just focus all your time on your craft and learn to be really good at responding to emails and also don't get emotionally attached to what you're doing and learn how to communicate well with clients because they don't care about your emotions. It's all about them, and you have to learn that this might be cool, but this is what they're looking for.
Mike Doyle of Drive80 Animation Studio, thank you so much for joining us on
Absolutely.
AV123.